In the 90s, MTV used to do this thing called Liquid Television where they would show animated products that they made. One of these was Aeon Flux, and I can tell you, it is freaking weird. It makes no sense. There's no continuity, but it's pretty kick-ass. And in 2005, there was a movie made of it, starring Charlize Theron? Is that who it was? I don't know. And anyway, I'm here to review the game based on it. So, it's time to review Aeon Flux, the game, for the PlayStation 2. Alright, I don't know much about the movie that's based on. I have watched the TV series a few times, but the movie apparently isn't that good. In fact, it made the creator of the original show, Peter Chung, and I quote, "Watching it made me feel helpless, humiliated, and sad." Kinda like my reaction to Ratchet & Clank 2. Ah, come on, people, it wasn't as good as the original. How did you get in my house? Excuse me a minute. Okay, after that, let's just continue with things. The story... I'm sorry, it's just the story is a complete mess. Why? It never tries to explain itself. There is no continuity, and if you have not watched the film, the TV series, or even have an instruction manual, it's a mess. No, I do know that the original MTV series had no continuity, but it was okay because it was a bit of a satire on mainstream action films, which is ironic because now it's a mainstream action film, so it just makes no sense for everyone else. But I suppose I may as well go with the plot of, well, the show. Basically, this year actually, in the timeline of Aeon Flux, there was some gigantic disease that killed off the majority of humanity, and there were only two factions left. Monica and Bregna. That sounds a lot more like two people you probably end up meeting on the Red Light District than the names of the last two places on Earth. Anyways, it's basically a utopian society of sorts, and the outside world is a big carnivorous plant thing. Woo. And in the game, you play as Aeon Flux, a Monican who basically has to infiltrate the Bregna government various times and usually encounters her, sometimes nemesis and sometimes lover, Trevor Goodchild, and sometimes his brother Orin, but he's not of much importance until later. Now, there's a lot of stuff about M-Fruit and being immortal, but it doesn't make sense. I suppose the only thing that does make sense is something called the stream. This is where when someone dies, instead of having this fate, essentially, when you die. And this is from the first episode of Aeon Flux, I'm not kidding. The stream usually brings the person back to life. Well, not really, it's more of a clone. Which I suppose makes some sort of sense because the game takes over a span of 400 years, so I suppose you gotta do something to clear things up. Fair enough. The game is essentially like Prince of Persia. Go from point A to point B, but there's no time reversal stuff. The controls are pretty simple. Of course, X is to jump. Sorry, I'm getting a little confused. The circle button is to roll, the square button is to punch, and the triangle button is to kick. Now, you can wall run at certain points in the game, but unlike Prince of Persia, you don't run across the wall with a button command, and I'll get onto that later. Instead, you jump at it from an angle. Yeah, again, I'll get onto that later because it's a mess. The R1 button allows you to fire at your enemies, and you can't aim, it's more of an auto-fire thing, which may become a slight annoyance. Now, there are different sorts of bullets, and you can get these by the D-pad. Now, pressing down on the D-pad will give you shockwave bullets, which will literally blow your enemies away unless they have this staff object to which they can cling to the ground with. And I can tell you, it's fun as hell to use those, because not only is it pretty damn strong, but it can fling them like feet away, and because it uses the Inferno engine, which are very impressive physics, it's so fun to watch. Pressing left on the D-pad will give you the Magma round, which is basically a stronger bullet that you can only fire once in a while. Pressing right on the D-pad will give you the Zipper, which is a boomerang thing that ricochets back and forth between enemies and knocks them to the ground. Finally, up on the D-pad will give you the Flechette, which basically is your standard garden variety SMG-esque weapon. Now, one specific ability you can do is with the L1 button in combination with a facepad button. Now, you can only do this when the enemy has 2 blocks of health left. L1 plus triangle will allow you to throw the enemy. L1 plus square will allow you to break their necks in some way and gain health. L1 plus circle will allow you to gain this blue stuff, I don't know what it does. And L1 plus X will allow you to put a spider bomb on their backs and it'll blow them to Kingdom Come. Now the L2 button has a few different functions. The first is that it'll allow you to repel, and you can shoot enemies while repelling, which is pretty awesome. And you can also do particular stuff. You can plant bombs, you can kill enemies, or you can land stylishly. Also with the L2 button, you can hack machinery. You simply just go out to it, and you put your ball thing in it, and you're now shooting people with turrets. And finally, there's a Metroid ball, which you'll have to use to get to some particular spots that you can't get into. These sections are alright, but a little bit annoying. Now, okay, there's a bit of bad stuff about this game. Aside from the poorly told story, the wall running is just plain broken. I mean, why can't you just use a button to run across the wall? I mean, the R2 button does nothing. Now that I think about it, well, that's just gone to waste, hasn't it? I mean, why do you have to jump at it from an angle? It just feels off. In fact, one level where you have to collect a whole load of spider bombs, and you have to press L2 while wall running. And the annoying thing is that there's ground below, so if you fall off, you're landing on the ground, and this is on a time limit. That's annoying, and the time limit is 2 minutes. Very, very annoying. As well as that, why the heck do they implement a grapple move for the enemies? If you're in a particular range of an enemy, they'll grab onto you, and it has no point. You can mash all the buttons all you like, but they'll still whack you, which not only might kill you, but it makes it incredibly pointless and annoying in groups. Another thing, and I suppose it's a minor one in this case, that bothers me, is one that always happens in some licensed properties. There's no blood. In the original Aeon Flux, there was a lot of blood. And this is always something that annoys me. In video game adaptations of certain franchises, there's no blood, like Dragon Ball games. I mean, this scene where Raditz is killed in Dragon Ball Z is freaking gory, but yet you'll see none of that in a Dragon Ball Z game. You'll get a couple of mild bruises and that's it. It's the same here. There's a lot of blood. Hell, about 4 minutes of the first episode is spent in a pool of blood, essentially. And there's no blood in the game. That's a bit annoying. As well as that, the last boss is a pain because he teleports everywhere. It's annoying. And another thing is the ending. Here's the ending. A giant gum of doom crashes into the city of Bregna, and these mosquito things implanted with a liquid that can turn metal to dust go around the city and basically turn the whole thing to dust, and all the carnivorous plants from outside invade it. Thank you, Aeon Flux. You've killed whatever was left of humanity. Thank you very much. And Aeon Flux is the worst of all. How? She is the most boring character in history. My god. Let's go through the things. Number 1, her character model is lifeless beyond belief. I mean, she just stands there. She has no fun idle poses. Number 2, her voice is so monotone that you could probably mistaken it for the female version of Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. In fact, you know who she is? She's essentially the female futuristic version of Tobey Maguire from the Spider-Man movies. Just a boring performance that'll put you to sleep on a character that is badass. Okay, whether Spider-Man is badass is definitely up to interpretation, but I think he's badass. In fact, there's only 2 good things about this character. One I will get on to later, and the second is that I can use my imagination to imagine her as someone else, like Fiona Fox from the Archie Sonic comics, for example. What? Can I help myself? The legs turn me on. Oh well. Anyways, there's a lot of good stuff in this game to make up for it. For starters, as I've said before, the Infernal engine has kick-ass physics, and the game's pretty detailed. I mean, I just love how the shockwave bullets blast everything out of the way. It's just so flipping awesome. I wish there was more environmental destruction, but what can you do? Second, Aeon Flux is a badass show-off. While she is rappelling, she will twirl around acrobatically and shoot enemies. How awesome is that? I mean, one of the best bits in the game is actually the intro, because she's doing what I just described. Rappelling, spinning around, and shooting thousands upon thousands of Bregna soldiers as they fall to the ground. And I think there's a bit of blood in there too. My god, that is so awesome. As well as that, the platforming is actually pretty fun. I suppose it's like a beginner's Prince of Persia. Well, apart from the incredibly annoying wall running. Fair enough. It's a fun It's definitely a fun platformer. And the last level is actually pretty epic. I mean, not only is the lighting pretty impressive, especially in the last part, but you're on a gun of doom! A giant gun of doom meant for genocide. Freaking awesome! So, overall, Aeon Flux is a pretty fun game. The platforming is pretty damn excellent, the physics rock, Aeon Flux is a badass show-off, and the last level has incredibly good lighting and it's epic, and the graphics are actually pretty good. The downsides are that the grappling sucks, Aeon Flux is boring, the wall running is terrible, and I don't know if I said this already, but the blast boss is annoying. And okay, the story's a little broken too. Overall, Aeon Flux gets a Jak and Daxter, meaning pretty kick-ass. So, until then, I shall see you guys for my next review. Matana!